CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success.
All right, everyone, we are recording live in Greenville, South Carolina. We are at StrEAMline conferences, and it's about a year to the day since I met in person and got the chance to record with Stephan Schomberg. He is with Elevotec, and some of you may know that Elevotec supports CMMS Radio's efforts and wants to just share great information with the industry. So, Stephan, welcome back to CMMS Radio.
Hi, Greg. Thanks a lot for having us. It's always a pleasure. We love to talk maintenance. We love to talk CMMS. So.
Well, and you know, with this particular event, it's also about EAM, Hexagon EAM, the primary sponsor.
Yeah.
And you guys got some phenomenal recognition last year in 2025 as we headed towards the end of the year from Hexagon as, I believe, one of their premier partners.
Yes, we had a really good year last year. We and again, I think when we talk with Hexagon, it's a great partnership. Like they've supported us, we've supported them, and you know, it's all working out. I think it's a good example of how partnerships work.
Yeah.
So we were really happy with what's happening.
Yeah, for me it was interesting because I know I also saw you. I think you might not have been there. We're at Hexagon Live, and I see how many different partners there are in their network, and it's always nice for me to see all of those people kind of coming together and not so much competing, but focusing on what are the client outcomes. It's one of the things about StrEAMline that I really love. It's why I started coming here in the first place last year, is it's that true community-focused type event. It's not so much about selling as it is about solving. And you and I this morning kind of bumped into each other, and you mentioned this topic that I want to get into with you about kind of the new guard that's coming up and the old guard that's essentially heading out, right? Retiring out. And there's some concerning things about how we manage that and mitigate the knowledge gaps they may have, the things they still need to learn as those cowgirls and cowboys are riding off into the sunset, so to speak. And I just kind of want to hear what your thoughts are on it now. I know we talked about it a little bit last year, but it's becoming a hotter and hotter topic, meaning it's of greater importance for us to solve that. How do we empower them and leave things better than they were, right?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I want to clarify, we saw each other in Dallas at the SMRP. That's where we saw each other last. But that was a really good show too. And but no, getting on to the topic, you know, this is something we have been thinking about over the years because, you know, you can tell by my hair that a lot of us are getting to the point now where we're not going to be in the workforce much longer. We've got a lot of younger people coming in the workforce, and that brain trust that we've had for the last X number of years is slowly retiring or moving off, and there's really less people even applying in the trades for things, right? So there's a bit of a gap there, but I think, you know, and again, I think technology can help sometimes with that gap, because, you know, as we work with younger people, and I've had to train some younger people and stuff. They really look for how do I get up to speed faster, right? And I remember back in the day we used to say, well, let's just Google it, right? You Google it, figure out how to do stuff, and half of it was right, half of it was wrong, and but having more collaborative tools for these younger people to get to the information or to connect with other people, I think is going to help them.
Yeah, the thing you talk about with like Google and other ways we would source information, there's this other thing about that resource is still here. It's important to spend time with them, next to them, and I like this concept of whether they can be side by side or at least interact, maybe from afar, where they're learning some of those insights from someone and they're not so reliant on the technology to tell them the way, and they can learn it from someone that sees and understands things in a way technology can't yet do.
Right.
I think that's invaluable. It's almost like that not a full-blown apprenticeship, but someone becomes a journeyman through a process of kind of failures, recoveries. They encounter unique things. And then when they have that person, that elder statesperson, if you will, that can impart, hey, be on the lookout for this, be on the lookout for that. That's not going to show up in your Google searches or, whatever else technology you use unless somebody puts it in there, because it's so unique contextually. Do you find that within your own organization or some of the ones that you serve, right? Some of your clients, that they're starting to get those people paired up, or is that not yet happening?
Well, I think it's hard to get a one-to-one there. It's more like a many-to-one. So even though it is happening, it's it's not happening to the extent it needs to happen, I don't think, right? So I'm doing a little talk tomorrow about a collaborative tool where we're actually connecting asset management to Google Chat. And these chat groups are a way of collaborating. So for example, let's say I have a big organization, I have like 100 maintenance staff, and I have 3 or 4 guys that are really understand maintenance. They could be part of that chat group so that if somebody gets in trouble, they can immediately get assistance from somebody that actually knows what they're doing, right? So I think we're going to be getting to more of that, where we're going to have these more senior maintenance people, almost like consulting to the companies in the sense of supporting the younger group with that expertise while they actually go through the ropes themselves. Because, I know there's a lot made up about technology, good and bad about technologies. There's still somebody's got to be boots on the ground to actually change that bearing. The bearing isn't going to, AI is not going to change your bearing.
Right.
But these tools can get you connected with somebody who can help you do that, or can actually possibly tell you better ways of maybe buying a better bearing that doesn't burn out, right? So I think technology is just another tool in our toolbox. We got to figure out how to use it and still get the information from the people who know what they're doing. So
yeah, and the way you put that is really exactly what it is. These technologies, whether it's EAM or some CMMS system, condition monitoring, all these things, they're there. And we say it like it's a broken record, but the reason we keep saying this, and this is the same conversation, is we don't want people to ignore that. We don't want them to lean on these things as if they're going to solve every problem. They're a part of the overall process, much of which is based on the fundamentals that we apply, and then we augment with the various tools. I mean, a screwdriver has several different uses, some of them creative, some of them ominous, and somewhere in between. And the person that's using it has to know where best to apply it. And that's the same with all these technologies. I think, with 2025 being in the rear view now, I wanted to ask, since SMRP or even the last time we were here at StrEAMline conferences, have you seen anything in the industry as far as trends that either did not materialize the way people thought they would, or they materialized unexpectedly?
Well, the latter, I was really amazed over the last 6 to 12 months of how government spending has picked up, infrastructure spending. I think the governments are really looking at, doing more now than I would have expected. Especially, in North America, they're trying to build up better infrastructure, fix things, and all that money influx into those areas, drives everything right from CMMS systems right down to the actual products that you have to produce to do that. So that was one of the ones I thought was kind of surprised me a bit, how it ramped up dramatically over the last little bit. On the other side of it is, what I thought was going to be more of a pickup, and it really hasn't been, is just the general spending in the private sector. So I think private sector has backed off a bit, and I don't know if it's just because of geodynamics that are changing in the world right now, but private sector has kind of backed off a bit, and public sector has really picked up. So I think that's the thing I've noticed in the amount of RFPs we've been doing for public and the amount of questions we're getting for private sector. So
yeah, it's interesting when you talk about that being a surprising one, and I say interesting because I remember a couple years back there were a lot of people really amplifying and sounding that alarm on infrastructure overall throughout North America.
Right.
And if we just focus on that, we hear things about 50 plus years of deferred maintenance.
Oh yeah.
Which, you're really asking for trouble. And I understand it's sometimes necessary, maybe something else comes up, but now they're going to do all that work, which I think is great, because then we get at least these pockets of improved infrastructure as it relates to, facilities, assets, things that support the assets, grid systems and all those. Is there a particular area within that overall sector that you think needs the most help right now, just based on what you've seen over your years, where they should really, like, you're really happy that they're finally doing it?
What, on the public side or on the private side?
On the public side.
On the public side?
Yeah.
Well, I think what they've been doing is they've been just sort of, like you said, they've been sort of coasting on for years and years and years on stuff, and they've created this really gap where they're so far behind now. It's like you can't cross a chasm with one step anymore. So they're in a position now where they really have to figure out like multiple steps now to get them back to where they really should be.
Yeah.
And so I think the area that I think is like in the big utilities, a lot of times, like the utilities communication in that area. Like we've done some work with a very large communications network, and they've basically been running on the same stuff for 20 years. And they were just amazed when we started to actually do stuff with them, because they were going like, wow, all this stuff exists. Like we can actually do linear assets. We can do, we can do all these different things. It's like they was totally blew them away.
Yeah.
So I think along the utilities and the communications, those are things that, like electricity, I always joke about. Like it's electricity, nobody thinks about it until you turn the switch and it's not there.
Yeah.
You don't think about all the infrastructure that supports electricity, and there's so much of it and so many different types of it, and a lot of that has been just kind of coasting for a lot of years too. So
yeah, I think it's, well, when they're telling you things like, we didn't even know that was a thing, we didn't know we could do that, and that is actually going to help us, that's pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah.
You're going to get a better outcome because they're seeing the value and they know what they can do with it to improve their processes. And I just wonder how this deferring of upgrades in technology, improvements in the infrastructure, what causes those delays to just continue? Is it a bad habit, or is it so disruptive to make the change, to make the improvement to the infrastructure, that it's just better to push it off? Like, is it that painful?
I think it is painful. But again, a lot of these people are thinking 20 years ago, the pain from 20 years ago when you had to change systems. When you had servers, and you had all your information on the server in the room in the corner, and now I want to change all that information into another system. It was always very painful 20 years ago to do that. Now you could stand up a cloud in parallel, and just when you're ready, you just switch over to the other one. So there's a lot less pain there nowadays than there was. But I think it still boils down to the expectation of pain and the cost. Like a lot of people are they're still hanging on to that 20-year-old information. Oh, it's going to cost me $2 million, and I'm going to be out of business for 3 months while we switch over. And they're using all that old information, and they need to reach out and talk to people and say, okay, what's it actually like today? Like what's an implementation look like today, and how am I going to be able to manage this, and what's it going to cost me? You know what I mean? So I think getting new information is going to help a lot of these people move forward.
Do you think there's a value for those types of organizations, actually, whether they're public or private, I would say for any of them, in keeping and holding their data within these platforms, let's say, for example, it's an EAM or a CMMS, all their various maintenance data, going back like infinitely, or should there be, like for the retrospective data, I've always been a fan of the idea that you should have access to it because it could give you important information and clues as to what led to maybe certain failures recurring or other things. I've never really asked anybody this question. Do you think there's a point at which you should purge old data and never look back?
Well, I think there's a point, but let's dig into that a little deeper. A lot of that old data is on a piece of paper under somebody's desk, so it's not even reusable data. If you go back 20 years, everybody's got a file folder with their asset history information that's not even being used. So if you take that away and you start with, okay, what do I actually have inside the system, like electronically? Where do I purge it? You don't have to purge data because the storage is so cheap now. And what we do is you can set up what we call bridge reporting. So the new system and the old system, the reporting combines both sets of data. It's like bridge reporting. So we encourage people, if it's usable data, if they want to keep it, like if it's actually usable, because a lot of data isn't usable after they've restructured their assets hierarchy or whatever. But if it's usable, hang on to it. The storage is cheap. Bridge reporting, you can still use it. So, rationalize what you really can get a benefit out of it. And then once you rationalize the benefit, take that data.
How much of that changes when you're looking at an organization and we go to the different levels of the organization as it relates to, from the plant floor, the shop floor, up to the boardroom, however you want to refer to that? Do those different levels have different opinions as to what the value is of said data? So let's make a couple of assumptions. One, it's good, clean data. It's not garbage data.
Right.
It's got good context. Yeah. It's got standardization. Would they have different opinions as to the importance of that maintenance and historic data as it relates to those assets? The further up you go, they're like, yeah, it's not a thing. We don't think about that.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. We had a conversation one time about, the top-down, bottom-up understanding of maintenance in general. And to be honest, like I've talked in a lot of boardrooms with a lot of the C-level people, and they don't really understand maintenance. What they understand is whether the equipment's running or not running, and whether their bottom line is being affected. So it's always a sell job at the top level to make them appreciate maintenance. Sort of like the electricity thing. They don't think about it until they hit the switch and it doesn't work. Well, they don't think about maintenance unless the plant's down.
Yeah.
So, but anyhow, it's their appreciation for it is that they get the high-end reporting. And the guy on the floor, he wants to make sure that he can figure out what bearing used the last time that thing broke, right?
Yeah.
So that broke 2 years ago. What bearing did we use 2 years ago for that, right? Because I can't even see it now. It's all busted to hell, and I need to figure out what the heck bearing that was, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference is that as you get higher up, the expectation is becoming more monetary and less numerical, like less what part number was that. They don't care. They just want to know, what's my downtime percentage of that equipment? Is it improving?
Well, and I think so sometimes when I'm recording episodes or having side conversations, we're kind of like, it'd be nice if they really understood this stuff. However, I think we have to make a little room for the idea that that's just not what they do, and they may be blind to it, but they're moving really fast at the top, so to speak. We're saying the top, not that they're above anybody, but what they do at that level is very fast moving. They don't have a lot of time. There's a lot of moving parts, and they can't know everything about everything at that point. It's pretty tough to do.
Right.
We're talking about corporations that they're global. They're worldwide corporations. There's too many moving parts, which is why we have so many different levels of management and different types of operations at different sites. Here's one. The variance and difference between operating style site to site within the same organization. Everyone has this idea that we need some sort of corporate-wide standardization, but that is almost an impossible undertaking. Would you say that that's kind of a correct statement, or not really?
Yeah, it's a bit of a utopia there to have everybody working exactly the same. I have seen it work in places where all the plants are pretty much exactly the same. Like we did a series of bread plants that bake bread, like 24 of them.
Yeah.
And we built standard in the first plant, and we pretty much rolled that standard out across the 24 plants. But they were all basically doing the same thing. You're baking bread, right? Very simple. They had same equipment in most cases. Some variation in equipment, but in general statement is like you could have 5 plants and they're making slightly different parts, or they have slightly different equipment, slightly different people skill sets that work there. So there's always a nuance of it. But I think if you try to keep the core the same, so in other words, what we do is we try to implement best business practice. So we have our own standard basically, which we start with. We say, okay, here's the best business way of doing everything. Will this work for you? And we start making adjustments off of that, the aspects that they need changed. And then what we try to do is we try to spread that across plants. So then you get to the next plant and they have one specific thing that's different, completely different, maybe a different line they have to deal with differently. So we start to tweak it a little bit. So there's exactly the same as basically utopia, but we can get pretty close, I think, if you have the mindset to do that.
Yeah, I think the reason I asked the question is, if someone hears this and they think for 28 different locations or 280 different locations, you're going to have that ultra locked down standardization across the board. That's just not likely. And just like the nuanced differences between technologies, there's nuanced differences between the same processes implemented in different cultural environments or different people, different mentalities. You mentioned skill sets. So you may strive for that kind of perfection or that utopia. I suppose it's okay to strive for that, but you have to know what the limits are site by site. And it's just always an interesting moving target. And I think to kind of close on that topic, I think one of the things I've seen over my years is that organizations don't do a great job of managing and keeping up with and maintaining their technologies and their processes to see if they're still, can we do an assessment periodically? And that's one that I don't understand why they don't do that very well.
Yeah, I think I do a lot of ERP implementations too, which is the whole business systems, manufacturing, finance, operations. So, and that's where we start. We start with business process review. So we start with, let's look at your standard SOPs, your standard business processes that you're currently doing, and let's see what the future states of those processes are going to be. And sometimes we do that without even talking about the software or anything like that as well, because we have to understand, okay, how's your business actually changing or operating? And if it was 20 years ago you did these processes, none of them are going to be the same anymore.
Right.
So, none of them.
Wouldn't it be nice if they were, though? You could just get so good as an organization at what you do, and you'd probably then be able to keep people forever. It would be... Yeah.
I think part of the problem is obviously businesses grow and they add product lines and all these different things are happening in the manufacturing side. And maintenance really is, we're kind of like the tail on the dog here, because we're kind of like following along. Okay, they're adding new product lines, they're doing this, they're doing that. And we're falling behind, kind of trying to support all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Make sure it doesn't break. And we're dealing with, manufacturers not giving us enough downtime to actually do the maintenance, so we have all these things that are sitting, or there's breakdowns, and that we have to jump on, and all these different things. So
yeah, so many moving parts, so many different things can happen day to day, week to week, month to month. You're all dialed in. You're ready to do. Let's say they've scheduled enough time for these really big reworks, and everybody's ready to go. It's going to be happening next week, and we just got a message that these 3 parts, they aren't going to be here for another 2 weeks. These are the things that you just can't control, you might have some plans for them, but you can never account for what has not yet happened. And that's another kind of disruptor that people sleep on when they schedule out projects or build out a work plan. I think where I'm going with that is to be perfect, to be more reliable, those are all arguably possible, but it's always going to be those basic elements and getting everything connected that makes the difference, right?
Yeah, and that's really where these systems can help. It can help understand what needs to happen at those time points. Like I always look back at this one. I remember nuclear power plant. I was talking to somebody there that schedules. They have a 2-week shutdown, and they schedule the entire year. They have a team that schedules the entire year for that 2 weeks, so that everything is perfect when that 2 weeks happens. And they run the 2 weeks shutdown, and then they start planning another cycle. So they plan 50 weeks of the year for those 2 weeks shutdown, and they plan, people, backup people, parts, backup parts, all the safeguards they have to shut down. They have backups for everything, so they can stop the reaction for this period of time, do the maintenance. It's all scheduled out to the T. But you can't do that if you're a manufacturer, you're making widgets. You can't have a team of people planning all year for your maintenance, because you just can't afford that.
These are the industry variances that a lot of people, even in industry, I might get in trouble for this, but I'm saying this anyway, that on the technology side, the providers of the said technology, the companies themselves that provide these great systems that we like to think we know how to leverage properly if we've done the right assessments and all this good stuff, right? The work that you guys do and a lot of the people we know in common.
Right.
I think the organizations providing these technologies don't necessarily understand as deeply these industry variances as they would want you to believe. And I think that too is an area where we can improve as an industry. But again, it's hard because it would be the same thing. You need the downtime for people to go and learn these things. And how are they going to learn them? It's not just from reading stuff.
No.
It's not just from listening to a podcast. You also have to be in the environment, see and do some of the work, or at least get exposed to it a lot. And they would be better orgs for delivering these outcomes. That's why I like hearing these stories from you, or like last year whenever we have Joe on.
Joe's wealth of knowledge there.
They're not just great stories, but they're meaningful for how people can get some inspiration around how they're seeing the world.
Right.
They can learn something new. They can kind of confirm that they were thinking about it right or wrong, which I guess is the same as learning something new. But the point is, nobody's alone out there. They should reach out to somebody that really knows this stuff. They should have these conversations. And just because they did that doesn't mean they have to buy something.
No, absolutely, yeah. We're all open to you. I know you're open to conversation. We're open to conversation.
Yeah.
That's absolutely.
And I think my point there is I encourage people to reach out to you or to Joe or to anyone on your team at Elevotec, especially if they're on the EAM system, the Hexagon EAM system, Asset Lifecycle Intelligence. And even if it's something else, if they don't have that particular software, if they have any needs in the maintenance and reliability and asset management sphere or facilities, they should be reaching out to you guys.
Or integrations. Like a lot of times
that too.
We do a lot of integrations with other systems, which is something that we get asked about a lot. Like, can you integrate with the Hexagon with this or with that? So. Yeah,
you guys do that too.
But to the point where you said reaching out, I was just a quick story. But when we were doing got a project for a large, I think I was mentioning a large communications network where they have those really tall radio towers. The ones that are like 400, 500 feet in the mountains and things like that. And I know a guy who built those. So built the towers. So we reached out to him and ended up bringing him on our team for this implementation. But having somebody that understood the details of the tower construction and talking with him, I came up with a concept where we use a linear asset model for a tower. So instead of having it flat on the ground, we're linear assets up. And it was a big hit with the customer because what we realized was if I'm changing asset at the top of the tower or the bottom of the tower, it's a big difference in what I have to prepare for. Because if I'm changing it at the ground level, I don't have to bring all the safety equipment. I don't have to have a spotter. I don't have to have all these particular things ready for that maintenance that I'm doing at the bottom of the tower. But if I'm doing it at the top of the tower, it's a totally different preparation. And what will happen is they will actually do maintenance to assets on the way up the tower as well. So we laid the tower out as a linear asset. So every 100 feet on the tower is like a linear asset, and they can see where their other assets on the tower are. And when you do your planning for your maintenance, now you can understand, okay, I've got a plan to go to the top of that tower to do maintenance. I'm going to have to get a certain job type, skilled person, a backup person, safety harnesses, the whole thing, right? So
yeah, well, it's almost the same as routing, but it's in this direction.
Routing up.
Yeah, that's pretty cool stuff. Well, I hope that the session that you're going to do goes really, really well, and maybe we'll get a chance to catch up again here on CMMS Radio just to see how that turned out. But Stephan Schomberg, Elevotec, thank you for being here with me once again, in Greenville, South Carolina, from StrEAMline conferences. Appreciate you being on CMMS Radio.
Hey, always a pleasure, Greg.
Yeah.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.